The temple was breathing in silence. Beyond its stone pillars, thunder whispered like an old god clearing his throat. Inside, incense smoke coiled into slow, uncertain spirals, rising toward a ceiling that vanished in shadow. A monk stood before the statue of the Creator, eyes searching for something that refused to be seen. He had prayed, studied, and wept beneath countless idols, yet the same question clung to him like mist. Is there God, or is there only the echo of our longing? His heartbeat pulsed with the rhythm of doubt. Outside, the Ganges carried fragments of flowers and ashes, offerings from the living to the unknown. He knelt, not to worship, but to listen. In that fragile stillness, he realized the answer might not come from the sky, but from the pause between two breaths, a silence more divine than any thunder. Still, he whispered to the void, "If you are there, why do you hide behind silence?" The rain had softened into mist by morning. Eshan left the temple gates, the world still wet and silver. His sandals sank into mud as he walked toward the forest road, leaving the comfort of incense and certainty behind. Villagers stared from their doorways, whispering prayers to gods he no longer called upon. He walked not out of rebellion, but of exhaustion, tired of searching for answers written by others. Every droplet on his robe felt like a question dissolving. When the river reappeared at the bend, he paused to listen. The wind moved through the reeds like a voice older than scripture. If there is God, he thought, perhaps he speaks in ways I've forgotten to hear. He closed his eyes. The rustling of trees became a reply that needed no language. By midday, Eshan reached a bustling monastery filled with chanting scholars. The air shimmered with debate, each monk arguing about the form and formlessness of divinity. Their voices collided like waves against stone. Some claimed the Creator was beyond human thought. Others said he was thought itself. Eshan listened, his heart swelling with both admiration and despair. They spoke as if certainty could be forged from words. He bowed respectfully, but inside a quiet fatigue bloomed. When he tried to speak, his voice was swallowed by their noise. Stepping outside, he found a lone beggar, smiling at the sun. The beggar said nothing, yet his silence felt truer than all the temple's debates. Eshan bowed to him instead, to that wordless knowing. 950 characters. That night, beneath a canopy of stars, doubt gnawed at him like a quiet hunger. He stared at the sky and wondered whether those stars were eyes, watching in divine stillness, or merely cold fires burning without meaning. His thoughts spun in circles until exhaustion replaced faith. Lying on the ground, he whispered into the dark, "If you are real, why must I chase you like a shadow?" The forest offered no answer, only the chirping of crickets and the slow breath of earth. Yet, somewhere deep inside that silence, a strange calm arose. Not the peace of belief, but the peace of surrendering the need to know. At dawn, Eshan followed the river until he reached a humble hut near the bamboo groves. Smoke curled from its roof. A man sat outside, pouring tea with movements so gentle they seemed part of the wind itself. When Eshan approached, the man did not ask who he was or what he sought. He only gestured for him to sit. They drank in silence. After some time, Eshan broke it. "Master," he said softly, "I have searched for God in temples, debates, and dreams." None answered. The elder looked up, eyes calm as still water. "Then perhaps," he said, "you have been listening too loudly." Eshan froze. The man smiled and continued pouring tea, each drop a sermon in motion. The wind rustled the bamboo, and for the first time, Eshan felt the question loosen its grip. Morning sunlight spilled through the bamboo leaves, painting trembling patterns on the earth. Eshan sat before the master, heart pounding with unspoken questions. "Please," he said, "tell me, does God exist?" The old monk's eyes lifted briefly, neither denying nor affirming. Instead, he poured tea into Eshan's cup until it overflowed, spilling hot water onto the table. Eshan flinched. The master looked at him calmly. "Like this cup," he said softly. "You are too full to receive anything new." Then, silence. The forest answered with its own breathing. The monk returned to his tea as if the question had never been asked. Eshan stared at the rising steam, unsure whether to feel insulted or enlightened. Yet, within that silence, something ancient stirred. For the first time, he wondered whether truth speaks louder when unspoken. 950 characters. Later that day, the sound of water became the master's only sermon. He led Eshan to a nearby stream and sat by its edge. For hours, they said nothing. The current whispered over stones, glinting under the afternoon sun. Eshan's impatience gnawed at him, each second stretching like a test. "Why won't he answer me?" he thought. But as he watched the ripples, something shifted. Each wave vanished only to return again, changing shape, yet never lost. The master finally spoke. "The river never asks where it begins or ends. It only flows." The simplicity pierced through Eshan's restless mind. For the first time, he heard something truer than thought. The sound of water, teaching what words cannot. The novice child appeared that evening, carrying a basket of fresh tea leaves. His curiosity was as bright as the fireflies beginning to stir in the fading light. He looked at Eshan and asked innocently, "If God made everything, then who made God?" The words hung in the air like a bell that refused to fade. Eshan felt a strange laughter rising within him, not of mockery, but recognition. He had chased such questions for years, and here they returned in the voice of a child. The master smiled, eyes gleaming with quiet joy. "The question," he said, "is older than the one who asks it." The child frowned, not understanding, and the master's laughter joined the evening breeze. In that moment, Eshan saw the beauty of not knowing. Night deepened, and the grove filled with the song of unseen crickets. Raku poured more tea, his laughter now a quiet hum. "We spend our lives trying to describe what cannot be named," he said. "A man looks at the sky and calls it heaven. Another calls it emptiness. Yet both are pointing at the same thing." Eshan watched the reflection of the moon in his cup, trembling but whole. "Then all our words are illusions?" he asked. The master nodded, eyes on the stars. "Words are like lanterns. They light the path. But they are not the destination." Silence followed, filled with the rhythm of night creatures and wind in the leaves. Eshan realized the master's silence was not emptiness. It was space wide enough to contain everything. Days passed in the rhythm of dawn and dusk. Eshan helped the master gather firewood, boil rice, sweep fallen leaves. No scripture, no sermon, only silence and labor. Yet, the stillness grew heavier each day. Not oppressive, but alive. He began noticing the pulse beneath everything. The hiss of boiling water, the crack of firewood, the breath before words. The question about God no longer felt urgent. It became softer, almost tender. One morning, as mist rolled through the grove, Eshan realized that the master had never once tried to teach him. He had simply shown him how to see. The river's murmur was now the same sound as his own breathing. In that shared silence, Eshan felt closer to truth than in all his years of study. Perhaps, he thought, enlightenment is not an answer, but the vanishing of the need for one. Night returned heavy with wind and memory. Alone in his small cell, Eshan felt the unease growing again. The silence that once comforted him now pressed against his chest like a weight. He had spent days beside the master in peace, Yet, beneath that calm, questions still pulsed like hidden embers. He had expected revelation, some divine confirmation, but none came. Only stillness. The world outside howled with wind, rattling the shutters. His mind echoed with every teaching he had ever heard. God is everything. God is nothing. God is beyond both. None satisfied him. He pressed his palms together and whispered into the darkness, "If there is no one to hear my prayer, then what am I?" The room answered with the slow drip of water from the ceiling, a rhythm that sounded like a pulse not his. Own day. Own. Cow. A nation show. Cha. 950 characters. Sleep came in fragments. His dreams were filled with gods made of smoke and laughter that turned to thunder. He ran through endless corridors of temples, each statue asking him the same question he had asked the sky. At the center stood a mirror, yet it reflected no one. When he woke, sweat clung to his robe like dew. The forest outside had quieted, but inside him storms continued to rage. He walked out into the moonlight, trembling between fear and awakening. The river shimmered nearby, reflecting constellations like eyes watching him. He knelt and touched the water. It was cold, alive. For a fleeting moment, he felt as though the river itself was breathing, not as a god, but as something far more intimate, something that needed no name. At dawn, Eshan returned to the river with a trembling calm. He sat on a rock, watching light unfold across the surface. Each ripple caught the sunrise and dissolved it again, 1,000 tiny beginnings and endings. He closed his eyes and followed his breath, feeling the rise and fall of his chest merge with the rhythm of the current. The more he tried to name what he felt, the more it slipped away. There was no God, no absence of God, only the act of seeing, the pulse of being. He realized his questions were like stones thrown into the river. Each splash vanished, but the water remained. He opened his eyes and smiled faintly. Perhaps the answer had always been this simple, too simple for the mind to accept. 1,050 characters. By midday, the master joined him by the river. Neither spoke. The silence between them had grown softer now, like the pause between heartbeats. After a long while, Raku picked up a pebble and dropped it into the water. "See how it disappears," he said. "That is the nature of every thought." The ripples widened, touching the far shore. Eshan watched until they faded. "Then," he said quietly, "what remains when the ripples are gone?" The master smiled. Not at the question, but at the stillness that followed it. "What remains," he said, "is what has always been." And again silence, the kind that doesn't end, but keeps expanding until even silence itself disappears. The river flowed on, unbothered by the depth of human wonder. As dusk returned, the forest glowed with amber fireflies. Eshan sat beside the master, gazing into the horizon. "I used to think finding God meant finding certainty," he said softly. "Now I'm not sure there is anything to find at all." Raku nodded. "The one who seeks must first vanish," he replied. "Then what is left is neither seeker nor sought, only seeing." The monk's words struck like a bell, resonating through Eshan's chest. For the first time, he felt gratitude for his doubt. It had carried him to the edge of surrender. The wind rose gently, carrying the scent of wet earth and tea leaves. As darkness enveloped the grove, he realized that the question itself had begun to dissolve, like mist returning to air. What remained was only breathing, and in that breath, he felt an infinite peace he could not explain. Morning sunlight spilled across the forest clearing, washing the air in gold. Eshan sat before the master, weary yet open. He had not spoken since dawn, but his eyes carried the same question. The master broke the silence with a story. "A man is struck by a poisoned arrow," he said softly. Before removing it, he insists on knowing who shot it, what caste he belonged to, what kind of bow he used. But before his questions are answered, the poison kills him. The words settled like dust between them. "You," the master continued, "ere that man." Eshan lowered his gaze. The wind moved through the bamboo, whispering in agreement. "If you seek truth, pull out the arrow first," the master said. "Knowing who fired it will not save you." The world fell still. Even the river seemed to listen. 950 characters. The words struck deeper than any wound. Eshan felt something inside him loosen. Not an answer, but the need for one. He looked down at his hands, calloused from work and prayer, and saw how they trembled with both fear and understanding. "Then all this time," he whispered, "I have been dying from questions." The master nodded, pouring tea without reply. The sound of liquid filling the cup was strangely soothing, a quiet reminder of the ordinary miracle that still existed even amid confusion. The air smelled of wet earth and wood smoke. Eshan lifted the cup, watching the steam drift upward and vanish. For the first time, he didn't chase its meaning. He simply watched it disappear, and that watching felt sacred. Later that day, they walked along the riverbank. The master's steps were slow, steady, like the rhythm of breath. "Whether there is God or not," he said, "the rain still falls, and hunger still hurts." His words carried no weight of doctrine, only truth born of experience. Eshan stopped walking. "Then what is the purpose of faith?" The master turned, the faintest smile beneath his beard. "Faith is not in what you believe, but in what you live. The one who sees life clearly no longer asks who made it." Eshan felt something dissolve inside him, the burden of needing certainty. They stood in silence as the river shimmered, carrying leaves downstream. Each leaf was a thought released, each ripple a lesson written in motion. 1,050 characters. That night, the grove was quiet, except for the low hum of cicadas. Eshan sat before the fire, his mind strangely clear. The master's story lingered, not as words, but as feeling. He realized how much of his life had been spent building walls of belief and disbelief, hoping one would shelter him from uncertainty. But both were cages. The master approached carrying a bowl of rice. "Eat," he said simply. "While the mind debates heaven, the body starves." Eshan smiled faintly. As he ate, he understood. Enlightenment was not some distant light to be reached, but the flame already flickering in every ordinary act. The rice tasted of smoke and simplicity, and yet it felt divine. Before dawn, Eshan returned alone to the river. The air was still, the sky pale with first light. He stood at the edge of the water and whispered, "If you exist, I will find you in this breath." Then he inhaled deeply, feeling the chill of air, the scent of wet earth, the pulse beneath his skin. For the first time, the words felt unnecessary. The river reflected his face, trembling yet whole. Behind him, the forest slowly woke, birds calling, leaves stirring. Everything breathed together. River, wind, body, sound. He bowed to the reflection, not as one worshipping something outside himself, but as one greeting what had always been within. In that moment, the question that had haunted him no longer mattered. There was no answer left to find, only life. Vivid. Immediate. Complete. Days unfolded like ripples on still water, without beginning or end. Eshan no longer sought to name what he felt. He simply lived within it. Every morning, he swept the courtyard, each motion tracing the rhythm of his breath. The question of God had dissolved into the motion of his broom, the warmth of sunlight on his back, the laughter of the novice chasing butterflies nearby. He began to see divinity not as a being, but as the quiet miracle of being itself. The sound of wind in bamboo replaced prayer. When he paused, listening to that endless murmur, he realized that nothing was missing. Not heaven, not meaning, not even the question. For the first time, his mind rested the way leaves rest after falling, complete in their stillness. 950 characters. Later that afternoon, the master watched from a distance as Ishan poured tea for the novice. The small boy spoke endlessly, asking questions about gods, rebirth, and spirits. Ishan only smiled. "When I was your age," he said softly, "I thought answers would free me, but now I see." The freedom was in the silence between them. The boy frowned, puzzled. Ishan handed him the cup, and together they listened to the wind. The world seemed to exhale. No sermon, no certainty, yet something vast lingered there, invisible but undeniable. The boy took a sip, and his expression softened, as if he too had tasted stillness. Evening fell with the hush of falling ash. Master Raku passed by as Ishan tended a small fire outside the hut. He paused, watching his disciples' movements, calm, unhurried, present. "You no longer ask," the master said. Ishan looked up, smiling faintly. "Because there is nothing left to ask," the master nodded. "Then the river has begun to flow through you." For a long while, they sat in silence, flames crackling between them. The fire illuminated their faces, two still mirrors reflecting the same light. In that shared quiet, no teacher or student remained, only the gentle breathing of night. The master's smile deepened. He knew the arrow had finally been removed. 1050 characters. The next morning, Ishan looked into a small pond near the grove. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the sky like a flawless mirror. As he gazed into it, he no longer saw a seeker, a believer, or a skeptic. Only the play of light and shadow. The reflection shimmered, then broke as a leaf fell into the surface. Ripples distorted his image, and in that distortion, he felt laughter rise within him. All his years of searching had been like staring into water, hoping to see something beyond himself. Now, even the self had become part of the reflection, transient, fluid, beautiful. The mirror had not revealed truth. It had revealed the emptiness that made truth possible. He closed his eyes, breathing in the peace of being nothing. As twilight returned, the wind rose across the grove. The sound was deep and low, like the earth exhaling centuries of breath. Ishan stood beneath the bamboo, feeling each gust move through him as though he were hollow. Then, without reason, he laughed. The sound startled even the birds from their nests. The master emerged from the hut, watching quietly. "What do you see?" he asked. Ishan replied, "I see nothing, and it is everything." The laughter faded into stillness. The grove seemed to echo with it, as though the trees themselves had understood. That night, as stars blossomed above, Ishan sat with eyes open to the vastness. Not seeking, not naming, only being. In that stillness, the mirror shattered, and he saw no reflection left to hold. Only the sky within the sky. Rain began before dawn, soft, endless, cleansing. The sound of it filled the world, tapping against the roof, dripping through bamboo leaves, merging with the steady breath of the earth. Ishan sat outside, robe damp, eyes closed. Each raindrop felt like a word from a language beyond sound. He no longer wondered who sent it or why it fell. He simply listened. There was no self to receive, no deity to give, only falling. Each drop struck the ground, vanished, and yet nothing was lost. In that moment he understood. The divine was not something to be reached or worshipped. It was the falling itself, the instant before thought, divides life into sacred and ordinary. The rain was truth made visible, and its rhythm was his own heartbeat. As the rain deepened, the world disappeared into sound and mist. The master joined him quietly, sitting beside him beneath the dripping eaves. Neither spoke. Water streamed from the roof, forming small rivers along the ground. "Look," Raku whispered at last, pointing to a single raindrop hanging from a leaf. "Each drop carries the whole sky." Eshan opened his eyes and watched the drop tremble, round, fragile, reflecting the infinite above it. When it finally fell, the reflection vanished, but the sky remained untouched. The truth struck him gently. All forms were mirrors of the formless, each vanishing only to reveal what was never lost. He smiled, understanding what the master had never said aloud. That enlightenment was not seeing something new, but seeing nothing as separate. 950 characters. When the rain stopped, the novice appeared from the grove, his robes soaked, face radiant with laughter. "The world smells new," he shouted, spinning in circles. Eshan watched him, the joy echoing inside his chest. The child paused, tilting his head. "So, is there God?" he asked, eyes bright with innocence. Eshan knelt beside him, still smiling. "There is only this breath," he said. The boy frowned, unsure what that meant, then smiled back anyway. Together they breathed, the same breath, shared with trees, clouds, and unseen stars. The world around them gleamed as if reborn. In that shared moment of breathing, Eshan felt something greater than faith. Unity. The divine was not above. It was within every inhalation of life. 1,050 characters. Later that evening, as clouds parted, Eshan and the master sat near the river. The air was cool and new, carrying the scent of wet soil and bamboo. "The world looks cleansed," Eshan said. The master nodded. "The world has always been pure. Only our seeing was clouded." Eshan looked at his reflection in the water, then at the stars above. For the first time, they looked the same. The boundary between heaven and earth had vanished. Both shimmered in a single stillness. "Then what is enlightenment?" he asked softly. The master smiled. "The moment you stop asking." They sat together as night descended. No sound, no word. Only the breathing of water, infinite and calm. When darkness fully embraced the grove, a temple bell rang from afar. Deep, resonant, ancient. Its echo rolled across the hills, like a heartbeat of the universe. Eshan closed his eyes, feeling the vibration ripple through his chest. The bell, the wind, the rustle of leaves, all blended into one continuous sound without beginning or end. He realized that everything was ringing together. The river, the rain, his breath, even his silence. There was no longer Eshan and the world. Only the unbroken song of existence. The bell faded, leaving a silence more profound than before. He whispered into it. There was never a question, only listening. And in that whisper, everything answered without words. The dawn arrived without color, only soft light breathing through mist. Eshan sat beneath the ancient Bodhi tree, unmoving, the world unfolding around him like a dream remembered from lifetimes ago. Birds began their first calls, and dew sparkled on the grass. In that quiet, there was no boundary between meditation and waking. Every sound, every breath, every flicker of light was the same pulse of existence. The question that had once haunted him, "Is there God?" now floated somewhere far behind thought, dissolving before it could even form. In its place was a vast simplicity. The realization that there was never anything to find, only the endless wonder of what already is. The silence was complete, and in that silence, the universe exhaled through him. 950 characters. The river flowed quietly beside him, carrying fragments of petals and fallen leaves. Each swirl and ripple mirrored the movement of clouds above, as if sky and water were dreaming of each other. Eshan opened his eyes and felt no separation. Between breath and wind, sound and silence, self and all things. The master approached, his steps soundless. "Have you found your God?" he asked, voice almost a whisper. Eshan turned, smiling gently. "There is nothing to find," he said, "because nothing was ever lost." The master nodded, eyes gleaming with warmth. Together they watched the river flow, not as teachers or students, not as seekers or saints, only as reflections upon the same water. Time seemed to stop. The wind slowed. The light softened, and even the distant bells faded into stillness. Eshan felt the air vibrating gently, not as sound, but as presence. Every leaf shimmered. Each blade of grass seemed alive with consciousness. He realized that what people called God was not an entity beyond the world, but the life shimmering within it. The sacred was not somewhere above the clouds. It was in the heartbeat of everything that is. He laughed softly, not from joy or disbelief, but from the sheer vastness of simplicity. For all the searching in prayer, the truth had always been this: nothing missing, nothing extra, only this unbroken now. 1050 characters. The day slowly turned to dusk. The master rose, leaving Eshan beneath the Bodhi tree. As the light dimmed, shadows stretched across the grove, long and silent. The river's hum deepened into the tone of eternity. Eshan felt no need to move, no need to know. The silence within him and the silence of the world had become one. He understood now why the Buddha had refused to answer the question of God, not out of doubt, but because the truth cannot be spoken. Words divide what was never separate. As stars began to appear, Eshan whispered into the twilight, "The question has dissolved." And in that whisper, all the answers of the world faded into stillness. The wind passed gently through the leaves, and that was enough. Night embraced the earth once more. The moon rose over the river, bright and full, its reflection trembling across the moving water. Eshan's eyes remained open, calm, illuminated. He did not feel enlightened nor awakened, only real, as if life itself had finally taken a single clear breath through him. The forest breathed with him, each sound perfectly placed in the music of stillness. In the far distance, a single bell rang again, not as a call to prayer, but as a celebration of silence. The river carried its echo downstream, endless and tender. As the sound faded, all that remained was the pulse of water and the soft rhythm of wind through bamboo. The screen of reality dissolved into darkness, leaving one sound behind: the eternal flow of the river, whispering the answer beyond words.